US President Trump taking another punch at India, posting on his social media platform. He says, quote, "Looks like we've lost India and Russia to deepest, darkest China. May they have a long and prosperous future together," unquote. Now, those comments made as US President Trump takes his tariff fight to the highest court in the United States. Trump's appeal to the Supreme Court this week comes after a lower court ruled that an overwhelming majority of Trump's tariffs would be cancelled. Now, if the Supreme Court rules that President Trump has overstepped, it would be the first major instance of the justices reinstating and really restraining his authority, rather. Now, a ruling against the tariffs would also raise questions on whether the US will need to pay back billions of dollars gathered so far. All of this, of course, has a direct impact on India, which faces some of the highest tariffs at 50%. Now, let's take a closer look at the story. We are joined for an exclusive interview by Nobel Prize-winning economist Abhijit Banerjee. Professor Banerjee, thank you so much for your time here on Washington Watch. Professor Banerjee, the US Supreme Court ruling is seen as pivotal. Arguments could start in November with a ruling by the end of the year. How much should we really be holding our breath for this, especially for countries like India?
I'm mostly not convinced that the Supreme Court will do very much. I think I'm not even sure they will overturn the executive's action. They tend to be very protective of the executive's choices. And second, I think there are many other ways in which President Trump could continue, as he has in many situations, just found other ways to get to the same thing. So I'm pessimistic that unless he wants to change the policy, they will be changed.
Got it. He has other mechanisms in his armor in case that verdict from the Supreme Court that might come against him. Now, Professor Banerjee, you've been quoted recently as saying that India needs to think hard if Russian oil imports are worth it. There are many, of course, who will disagree with you, saying that India should not back down. This is a sovereign country buying oil that is not sanctioned. What do you have to say to them?
I guess we're a sovereign country, but we are in many ways we're also we make compromises all the time. We weren't quite as let's say leaning towards Beijing till recently. We had our own issues with, for example, the dam that's on the Arunachal border, all kinds of, it's not that we don't make compromises. Mm-hmm. So I think taking the moral high ground only when it's kind of somehow convenient for us or strikes me as being inconsistent with the way we behave. So we might as well be it's very much a pragmatist dominated world and a bit of a nasty place, and we have only limited choices.
And talking about being nasty, we saw President Trump make another caustic statement against India a few hours ago, saying that the US has lost India to a dark China. I think many Indians have developed thick skin with these repeated remarks, really meant to poke and provoke. But Professor Banerjee, you talked also about China. Now, as far as those India-China ties go, the trade ties, how much do you think that will help ease the pain of the US tariffs?
Directly, I think directly they're going to do relatively little because we have very different trade patterns vis-a-vis the US and China, and it's not easy to pivot. I think it's more importantly, it gives us a moment to go back to thinking about the RCEP and whether we should be part of a larger grouping that includes China, where I think there might well be benefits to being part of a grouping that has Japan and Australia and many others in it. And there we wouldn't be directly exposed only to China and therefore a little bit under China's thumb. And I think that might well be a question we want to ask ourselves: is do we want to reconsider joining the RCEP? What are those compromises less onerous than the others we'll have to make?
Professor Banerjee, how do you think India and the United States can break this stalemate?
I don't know the answer to that question. I think this idea that is very much in the media, that we've somehow offended President Trump by resisting his idea that he made peace. I just don't know what we can do. If that's the truth, then I don't know that what we can do. I mean, if we really don't think that's the truth, then it's sort of, we're stuck a bit on that.
Professor Banerjee, what about a phone call between Trump and Modi?
I think we should always keep lines open. I don't see a reason not to do the phone call. The question is whether or not that will make things worse or better. I mean, the question is whether the phone call will lead Trump to lean even heavier on the peace issue, and then will we put in an even more uncomfortable position. That's, I think, the reason why the Indian government has been hesitating.
Professor Banerjee, thank you so much for your time here on Washington Watch.